Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose. As long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
All right, my friend, how have you been this week since we last talked?
Pretty good. Advancing more on this voiceover thing I'm doing, so that's exciting. And I'm ecstatic to see the Packers get absolutely destroyed today. I really am.
Oh my God, yes. I forgot the game because last week we got spoiled because they had to switch up the Chiefs Steelers game to a later time because of weather, and I was like, I kind of like the afternoon game and a night game, so I have my morning free. And I kind of just lulled myself into thinking that's how it was going to be this week. And so I forgot the game was on. So I was like, oh, crap. So I went running downstairs, turned on the TV, and it was a rout already. And I was like, I wish I would have got to see the routing happen.
Yeah, I missed a good chunk of it because I had other stuff to do today, but I saw the end, and I'm probably going to watch all the highlights later.
Yeah, a buddy of mine has it on DVR, so I might go over there tomorrow to just watch it and fast forward through the commercials and stuff just to catch what I missed.
There you go. I'll just tell you this: Julio Jones was amazing today.
You know what? Honestly, if you were the Falcons and after you watched the way that the Packers couldn't cover Dez Bryant at all. Mm-hmm. Why in the world wouldn't you just go to Julio Jones all day long?
Exactly.
I mean, I know the Packers have a hard time stopping the run too, so you don't solely bail on the run, but that should be your bread and butter, just all day to Julio Jones and eat him up. And so it's going to be an interesting Super Bowl. Hopefully the Steelers can pull this out because I don't like the Patriots.
Yeah, I agree, but I think either way, I'm rooting for the Falcons to win. I want to see Matt Ryan get a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I mean, he's a really good quarterback that people forget about just because he's in the unsexy conference and his team has been pretty bad the last couple of years.
Right. And now their offensive unit, I mean, they have it all. They've got a good quarterback, they've got great receivers, and they got a great running game. They have it all right now. Yeah,
they do. So let's jump right in this episode. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. This is your hosts, Alex and Sean. And we've got a pretty good episode here for you. We're going to talk Bulls, Blackhawks, a little bit of Bears, and this will be the first week of our NFL draft coverage. We'll jump into that as soon as we talk about our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. So they're out of town right now, but they will be coming back to town this coming week. So head on over to icehogs.com. Buy some tickets, jerseys, hats, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Only 90 minutes from the city limits and fun for the whole family. And in fact, my daughter now is so obsessed with the Ice Hogs and the Blackhawks that we started her in preschool. She's 2, and my wife went to drop her off, and she's like, "No, mommy, no school. Go Hogs. Go Hogs." So the Hogs were in San Antonio this weekend, so we went to see the Wolves instead. Boo. But she got her hockey fix.
I'm not going to lie. I have a soft spot for the Wolves. I do. I'm just going to throw that out there. But, I root for both those teams. Obviously, the Hawks and the Hogs for one reason. And the Wolves, I know they're affiliated with the Blues, but I live right by there. I've been going to games my whole life. So I kind of have a little soft spot there, I must admit.
Yeah, it's really close to our house. I'm on the northwest side of the city. And I just jump right on 294 and I'm there in a couple of minutes. So that's what we do. It's, was like a week ago. It was like the Ice Hogs. I love going there. I think the stadium is fantastic. It's so great for AHL hockey, but and it's so much more like of a fan experience than going to the giant Allstate Arena, but it's 90 minutes from my house, so I have to do it on weekends unless I take a half day from work or something.
Yeah, it's literally 15 minutes from my house, so it's really cheap. So if we want to go to a hockey game, we just kind of go.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So AHL hockey, I do like it.
I love AHL hockey. I love it.
Yeah, I went to the game last night against the Admirals, and
they lost 1-0.
it was a rough game. It was really physical.
Yeah.
It's hilarious as there was a kid probably like 10, 12 years old sitting next to us, and there was a fight broke out, and he started screaming, fight. And my daughter looks at him and she goes, fight, and started waving her hands trying to imitate this kid.
Oh, that's funny. I'm actually going to the Wolves-Hogs game in a few weeks, and that's going to be the Juliana Zobrist concert right afterwards. So,
is that like February 2nd or 3rd?
4th, the day before the Super Bowl. So, yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah,
I always like Wolves-Hogs games. They're always a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. It's I went to the last one, and it was a blowout, but usually they're pretty good matchup.
Absolutely.
All right, my friend, what would you like to talk about first?
Well, football is pretty relevant right now, so I think did you want to touch a little bit at all with the NFC Championship game briefly before we get into anything else? Because I feel like that was pretty notable in the football world. I don't know what you think, but I thought it was.
Actually, I forgot. I would like to give a quick moment of silence. We had 2 deaths in the baseball world. Andy Marte in separate car crashes. Andy Marte and Yordano Ventura both passed away last night in car crashes. So just want to give a moment, not Chicago teams, but still loss of life. Give a moment of silence. It's so crazy to lose young players, to freak accidents and things like that.
He was only 25 years old, Yordano Ventura. Only 25.
That's a major blow to the sports world. That's like three really young stars lost to accidents in the last few months.
Yeah, and they're all so young. And the thing is, do you remember when Nick Adenhart died in 2009? That was like one of the few baseball deaths for like years, and then all of a sudden you have multiple baseball deaths within a year. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah. It's there was the Yankee guy that died in the car or the plane crash. I can't remember his name.
Yankee guy. I remember Oscar Taveras with the Cardinals.
He died, and then there was a Yankees player. This was probably right around 9/11. He was piloting a small plane, and he crashed. Now I'm drawing a blank on his name.
I remember one guy on the Cardinals passed away around 2002, and they were set to play the Cubs at Wrigley Field, and they canceled the game due to his death. I can't remember who that was, but when somebody dies in a sport so unexpectedly like that, it's really one of those things that just makes you think like, man, wow, no matter what, bad things just happen to all sorts of people, and it's really sad.
Yeah, it was Corey Lytle, 2006. He was piloting a small plane, and he crashed into a residential building in New York City. 34 years old.
I forgot about that. Yeah, it's really sad. And neither of us were born at this time, but in the early '60s, there was the kid named Ken Hubbs on the Cubs who died in a plane crash, and he had a really bright career for him going ahead, but he tragically died, and he was very young too.
Yeah, it's so crazy. I mean, if you think about it, though, think about how many athletes that there are in professional sports, and statistically, some of them are gonna pass away early. But it's when it's somebody that you recognize through sports, it just seems like it hits really close to home.
Yeah, and I will never forget the morning that Jose Fernandez died, one of the best young pitchers in baseball, someone who was so well liked by not only the team but in baseball in general, and just the shock on everyone's TL reaction and how everyone was saying how it was unbelievable, because it truly was. And you saw how sad and shocked the Marlins were during that presser. They were lost for words. They were so shocked. They couldn't get a complete sentence out. I mean, and I went to the game, the Cubs game, the last game of the season, and that was about when it happened. So there was a big honor for him. They had his jersey hung up in the dugout. You could just tell everyone was really, really kind of struck hard by this loss, and as much as the fans were, if not more. So, it doesn't happen too often, but when it does, man, it can really hit you.
Yeah, absolutely. So this NFC Championship game.
Yes.
I mean, honestly, the biggest takeaway for me is, and I guess we can incorporate Bears talk into this a little bit.
Sure.
Is the biggest takeaway from me is the Bears need for a better class of quarterback. Is watching these 4 games, and I mean these 4 teams in the 2 games, it's Tom Brady, who's arguably the best quarterback ever, Aaron Rodgers, who is one of the best ever, Ben Roethlisberger is a multiple Super Bowl winner, going to go in the Hall of Fame, and Matt Ryan he's got some pretty darn fantastic numbers, and if he keeps this up, he might be in the Hall of Fame too.
Yeah, and I mean, you think about Matt Ryan, and you think about the MVP voting, and you could go on that tangent several ways, but look at Matt Ryan this year, and he consistently was good. He was consistently putting up Pro Bowl numbers. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, when he said he'd run the table and win the division, he was, fantastic, but you saw what Ryan did. I mean, he was consistently good throughout this entire season, and that deserves recognition. And you know what? I said this on Twitter. If you didn't respect the Falcons before this game, you darn better respect them now, because they put up 44 points, beat probably the hottest quarterback in football, and are now playing in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't take anything away from them, and all of the naysayers and that, well, who have they beaten? They were in a weak division, and they've absolutely manhandled everybody in front of them. And I have a really good friend who's a Cowboys fan, and so last week I was double rooting for the Cowboys, one for his sake and one because I don't like the Packers. And you know what? Honestly, it wouldn't have mattered if the Cowboys won that game. They would have gotten manhandled in this game as well. It's just the Falcons are just too good for anybody else in the NFC.
Right now, they were a team of destiny in the NFC, and when everyone was talking about the NFC, it was always, throughout the year, Cowboys, 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 then some Giants, then Packers and Cowboys, then Packers, Cowboys, Giants, then Cowboys, Packers, and mixed in within all that was this unbelievably talented Falcons team just quietly doing their thing. And then they were quiet no more when they dominated a great defense in Seattle and the hottest quarterback in football in Rodgers. They're now in the Super Bowl. And it's just kind of like, wow, we've spent all this time in the NFC talking about the Cowboys and the Packers and the Giants and maybe even the Seahawks. But here are the Falcons, and they are putting up some monster numbers. I mean, Julio Jones, he's a stud. He should be talked about as the best target in football right now. And look at Devonta Freeman. He is running all over the place, along with Matt Ryan, who's doing great at quarterback. So they really, really deserve recognition that they just have not gotten throughout this season.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest knock on them, and I mean, offensively, I knew they could score with anybody, but I just wondered if their defense would step up enough.
Right.
But they make enough plays. They can rush the passer well and make them uncomfortable, and their secondary is good enough to make the good thing is this is what the Bears need to get to, is a point where their front seven is so good that it masks deficiencies in the secondary. So that way, even if you do get a good secondary, you're that much better. But with a mediocre secondary, you can get by because they don't have to cover as long because your pass rush is going to get there sooner or later. And that's kind of the Falcons, is their guys are willing to take some more risks and play tighter than they would if they knew the pass rush wasn't going to get there. And pass rush either gets there or gets enough there to force quarterbacks out of the pocket, make them uncomfortable, throw off balance, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and think of it this way. The Packers didn't score in the entire first half. They kept Rodgers off the board in the entire first half. And by the time the Packers started scoring, the game was over. The game was over. They were down by 30, 25, 28, around there in several points of the game when they scored. When the game was still young, they held their own. They didn't let Rodgers do much, and that's something also I think that a lot of people are talking about right now, is how they kept him off the board when it really kind of mattered, because if the Packers got some points early on while the Falcons were getting points, they could have hung with them. They could have hung with them the game, but they didn't let that happen. They just kept building that lead and building and stopping. So by the time Rodgers did something, game was already over.
Yeah, and that's and the thing is with an offense like Atlanta, it makes your defense get a little tight because they know, and your offense as well, because the offense knows that they have to score. They have to take chances. Right. They have to score. They can't just play the field position game, because Atlanta can just march right down the field and score. And your defense is like, all right, well, we got to make some stops here. We have to. And you try to go for some risks to make plays, and if you're not right there, spot on 100%, you're going to get burned. And the opposing offense, they need to keep pace, because that Atlanta team is going to put up some points. And in the Super Bowl, regardless of who they play, they're going to put up some points.
It's going to be a high-scoring Super Bowl, I think, either way. No matter who wins the AFC title, it's going to be a high-scoring Super Bowl, because, are you going to have Tom Brady? Are you going to have Roethlisberger and his team? Either way, I think it's not going to be a very defensive Super Bowl where, last year we saw much tighter defenses, whether it was, the Broncos with Von Miller carrying that entire defense, or, the Panthers had a pretty good defense too. This year, it's going to be a little different. It's going to be very offensive based, and I think that it could come to a point where one key possession could turn the tide of the game because of the way they could potentially trade off points, whether it is the Steelers or the Patriots, because they're both capable of that.
Yeah, so and going back to the Bears, if you look statistically at the Bears, they're not as bad as their record indicates, or the way that offensively, if you look at the offensive statistics based on yards, the Bears offense ranked higher in total offense than 5 teams in the playoffs. Higher than Kansas City, higher than Detroit, higher than Miami, higher than the Giants, and higher than the Texans. They wound up 17th in rushing offense, which is better than 4 teams in the playoffs. That's Seattle, Green Bay, the Giants, and Detroit. And their 14th ranked passing offense is better than the Giants, Kansas City, Dallas, Miami, Houston. And on defense, their total defense ranked better than Detroit, Green Bay, Kansas City, Atlanta, Oakland, and Miami. And except for those last 3 games where they just got thrashed in the running game, they end up falling to 27th against the run. But they had a 7th ranked pass defense, and despite only 8 turnovers causing 8 turnovers, and that's better than Miami, Pittsburgh, Kansas City, Detroit, New York, Oakland, Dallas, Atlanta, and Green Bay. So, the Bears are doing some nice things. The Bears have done some nice things, but basically what those numbers sort of tell you is they don't have a special playmaker on defense and offense to convert those nice statistics into productivity as far as wins. So you had a minus 20 turnover ratio for this season. You're lacking at the quarterback position.
Right, and that's one thing I think the Bears really need to look at when it comes to the defense. Obviously, they want to work on the secondary. It's obvious. We know that. They're probably going to do it. But I just really, really want them to get guys, or at least get better in general as a team, at taking the football away. Because, like you said, they had very few turnovers, and I want to see more guys that can take the ball away or have a better time at forcing the ball away, because it's something really that the Bears have played off of their entire existence, is the defense and the ability to generate turnovers, and we didn't see that at all last year with that defense.
Yeah, and the nice thing is, if the Bears are honest with what their intentions were as far as when they draft, is sticking true to their draft boards and not drafting for need, but drafting best player available. The way this draft is going to play out is they're going to draft a really special, potentially really special defensive player at number 3. And honestly, I'm fine with that. There's a lot of options that the Bears can go with at quarterback to stabilize them, because they're not going to be Super Bowl contenders next year. So why not just my plan is you make your decision on Cutler, probably get rid of him. And that would mean you're going to start probably Brian Hoyer, or Connor Shaw.
Some sort of bridge guy.
Yeah, or you really liked Connor Shaw. I mean, honestly, what I would probably do is Brian Hoyer be penciled in as your starter, bring back Connor Shaw because you liked things he could do, and he didn't get the opportunity to show it because of a broken bone. And then you draft somebody, probably either trade back into late in the first round or in the second round, and so you have a pretty high pick, and you cultivate competition that way. You have you've got a stud running back. If you bring back Alshon and you have Kevin White healthy, you have a pretty good receiving core, and potentially the offensive line could be better, because based on some things that I've heard, and a quote from Kyle Long is, going into this season, he was guard, or I'm playing guard, I want to play guard. Now he's saying, I'm open to whatever the coaches want to, where the coaches want to move me. Which makes me think that somebody's said to him, listen, we think we're going to move you. We're going to try it out.
Sure.
So, I mean, honestly, what makes sense is move him to left tackle. He struggled at right tackle. It's a much more physical position, but he's athleticism. He could be a good left tackle. You already said it, left guard. And the rumor I'm hearing is that Hronis Grasu, is they still like him. They move him to center because he can't play anywhere else. He's a center. Cody Whitehair, they move to right guard, and Bobby Massey is the incumbent for right tackle, and you have your left tackle that's going to be competition, and probably draft somebody in the mid to late rounds for competition as well, to give yourself the best 5 offensive linemen out there at the same time.
Yeah, that's interesting, because we saw how good Kyle Long was when he first came into the league in his original position, and then we saw the struggles at the second position. But if they want to do some moving around, if they want to do some working on it in a season that you're, like you said, are not going to be Super Bowl contenders, go all for that. My overall feeling on the Bears is, do this right. Rebuild this right. If that means taking a little extra time to rebuild it right instead of rushing, then so be it. we had to be patient with the Cubs. Sox fans are going to have to be patient with the Sox. If they have a plan, and if they have a certain way of looking at how they're going to attack this plan, and if it's going to take a little time to work things out, to draft the right guys, to develop the right guys, if they take a little time but get it right, then do it right. Don't rush it. Don't try to pull the contend while rebuilding thing. They know now it doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. Do it right. That's what's important.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing about Kyle Long at right tackle is right tackle and left tackle are different positions, even though they're both called tackle. And you've had countless numbers of guys that have failed on one side and been good, great, and serviceable at the other position. And plus, when Kyle Long was transitioned to right tackle, it was at the last minute. I mean, it was
very sudden.
It was just very sudden, right before the season started, and he had a nagging injury the whole season. So it was, and during the season he got better before the injuries started taking over and he regressed. But in the middle of the season, he wasn't bad. Even, against Julius Peppers was a nice example because he played him twice, and he played him once early and once towards the late part of the season, and much better improvement. And even Julius Peppers talked about the improvement with Kyle Long. If you give the guy the off season saying, hey, listen, this is what we want to do with you, so he has that time to learn more about how to play the position, watch some film on, and work with the coaches on what he needs to do, and then have the whole training camp to work at that position, you're going to get better results. And I think he's so athletic, he would be a good left tackle.
Yeah, and the big key there is staying healthy, but we know how athletic he is when he is healthy. We know how good he is when he's healthy. It's been frustrating knowing that your best player, the Bears' truly best player, has had these injury problems the past 2 years. It makes being a Bears fan even more frustrating. It really does.
Oh, absolutely. And one of my big concerns with the Bears is I know the one is them reaching for a quarterback too early in the draft. And that's not to say that somebody everyone's got a short-term memory, so everyone is Deshaun Watson because of what he did in the last 2 games of the season, the 2 playoff games. But maybe Deshaun Watson is great. Maybe he's going to be great. Maybe he's going to be Vince Young as well. So I just, if the Bears deem he's worth, he is the top guy on their draft board when they get to number 3, then fine. I'm happy to take him, but I just don't want them to reach, and I just don't feel that he or any of the quarterbacks are worth it. I have a feeling I think the top probably 5 players are defensive players in this draft. And
absolutely.
I have a sneaking feeling that somebody's going to slip down because either the Browns or the 49ers are going to jump and draft Mitch Trubisky. And they're going to take him he's going to go 1 or 2 just by the nature of things, and somebody's going to fall to the Bears. Mel Kiper came out with his mock draft 1.0 and had Jonathan Allen go to the Bears at number, and it was a case of that is they had the 49ers picking Mitch Trubisky and Jonathan Allen falling, and Jonathan Allen is depending on who's big boards 1 or 2 right now. So to have him fall, nice. You put him with Akeem Hicks and Eddie Goldman is suddenly, it's a pretty formidable line there.
Yeah, I saw that same draft too, and I think it was him that said this as well. He said that with John Fox being involved like he is in this draft, a defensive-minded guy that probably would sway them to go defensive-minded in the first round. Obviously, that's not for sure, but that's kind of the thought process that people are having when predicting what the Bears are going to do. And the thing about the Bears overall is there's so many areas that need to be improved on that there's no one surefire guy that you could go after. You could go after that one other safety. I'm blanking on his name. You could go
Hooker?
on. Yes.
There's a couple good safeties, but yeah,
There's
Hooker's
him.
usually the top one. And then there's the guy from LSU.
Yeah, that's who I was thinking of as well. I was just talking about him, but you know who I'm talking about, and
Yeah.
you look at that kind of thing, and we've talked about this before. We haven't had a good safety in a long time, and we're trying to rebuild a secondary that needs to be rebuilt, and I think that could be a very, very good move if they went for one of those guys. Or we talked about Allen as well, on the defensive line, and like I said, there's multiple areas that could be improved on, and there's going to be a lot of defensive talent there. So my true feeling is that they are going to go defensive with the 3rd overall pick. And I know Ryan Pace, he's not a dumb guy. He's not. I mean, he knows what's wrong with the Bears. He knows what needs to be put where and what needs to be improved. So, their philosophy, they've kind of talked about it. They want best available. The best available right now seem to be defensive players. So, that's something I could really see them doing is kind of somewhere in that pool of, whether the safeties or defensive line with Allen. It's gonna be interesting to see, especially now that people are talking about like Deshaun Watson and other some of those other quarterbacks as being higher than they've originally been ranked before. So, we'll see. It'll be interesting.
Yeah, even in Mel Kiper's draft 1.0, he in his big board, I want to say Deshaun Watson is in the low 30s, like 32nd or 33rd ranked person in his draft, but he mocked him at number 10. And so he had Buffalo reaching, 20 some spots to get the quarterback because of desperation. And somebody's going to be desperate enough. And, somebody's going to do it. And I just hope it's not the Bears. If the Bears deem somebody, if the Bears were to take that number 2 pick, which is, right at the very, very top of the 2nd round, if they want to couple that with another pick to move back into the 1st round and then take somebody like a Watson or a Kaiser, then I'm not sad about that. That's smart. But
yeah,
you have been blessed with, I mean, based on a bad season, but you've been blessed with this, very high picks in every round. So sometimes when teams are tied, you get 5 teams are tied, you get this pick in that round, and then it snakes back around and you get the that later pick the next round. But the Bears are sole 3rd place, so it's or 3rd from bottom, so they get the 3rd pick in every round, barring somebody them trading,
barring a trade. Yeah.
So they've got the opportunity to get some impactful players. They have to hit on them, and they have to do what they did last year. And if you can do what they did last year and have a better pool of player to do it because you're drafting higher, you're on the road to being a playoff team.
Right. And you kind of talked about the desperation thing by some teams. Personally, right now with this management regime, I don't sense like panic or urgency. To me, I know we haven't heard a lot from Ryan Pace. I know we don't hear much from the Bears, period, and it kind of frustrates the fans, but I just don't sense that they're desperate or trying to rush things. I truly feel like their goal at the end of the day is to do this right. So, I'm feeling a bit more optimistic than I have in the past about Bears drafts. And hey, I could be totally wrong, but that's just kind of my sense. I don't know what you think about that.
I like what their philosophy's been. Like I said before, is when Ryan Pace first came in here, his first draft, we're on the fence of where they are with Kevin White and Hronis Grasu and where you're going there. But there's still opportunity for that draft to come out. And I saw the thinking process of Ryan Pace in that. Like I said, I mocked every one of those guys except for Teo Fabaluje. I mocked every single other person to the Bears. And so I understood the process. I'm like, I like this because with every other GM I could think of, I've never understood where, like, at some point maybe, I get why they drafted this guy, but sometimes it's just like, why did they draft this guy in this round, or why did they get this? I didn't understand the thought process, and it felt more like they were just, like, it wasn't one cohesive draft process. It felt like they was just, I'm up, or let me pick this guy. It felt like the drunk guy at a fantasy draft. I feel like with Ryan Pace, you have this cohesive draft strategy that they're doing, and I would be shocked to find out if it wasn't that, like, here's our big board, here's scenarios, here's us doing mock drafts with ourselves to try to think of different possibilities of who could take what, or trade rumblings, because it's a process, and I like that cerebral way to do it, because that's the way to win.
Right, and you have to prepare for every scenario, because obviously you can want a guy and they could be drafted. Well, you got to have a plan B. You got a plan B that doesn't work out. You got to have a plan C, and so on and so forth. And like you said, that is the key to winning. So, say what you want about the way John Fox may get involved, but if Ryan Pace truly follows his ideals, his philosophy, whether, there's influence from the coaching or not, I feel like Ryan Pace does have a vision. It wasn't the, here's everything we're going to do, Theo Epstein vision, the kind of the Moses freeing of the slaves type of promised land bringing, but I feel like he does have an idea of where he wants this to go, and he may not talk about it a lot. We may not get a great impression from the media because we don't hear from him a lot, but I do feel like there is some sort of solidified plan here, and he's got the scenarios planned out. He just does not strike me as a guy like Emery or Angelo. He just seems very, very serious about his ways, despite, a lot of other crap that's been going on with the team. So, I'd love to talk to him personally to kind of ask him what he kind of had in mind, but that's why I'm not giving up on Ryan Pace yet. You can't judge him after being so time so little here. So I think this might be one of the most interesting Bears drafts we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, and I reached out to the Chicago Bears to get Ryan Pace on the show, and I was told no.
Well, we tried, right?
Yeah. I got a flat out no. But I'm going to keep trying. I'm eventually going to get him. If I have to, like, hunt him down somewhere, I'm like, be on our show.
Please.
But my other big fear with the Bears is that they're going to make a big mistake with a quarterback, and the quarterback in question is Jimmy Garoppolo. And this is not a knock on Jimmy Garoppolo. I haven't watched enough Jimmy Garoppolo to flush him out, but think about all of the backup quarterbacks behind great quarterbacks that have been given huge money or big opportunities and really cost teams. Scott Mitchell was behind Dan Marino, Matt Castle behind Tom Brady, Matt Flynn behind Aaron Rodgers, Kevin Cobb behind Donovan McNabb, Chad Henne behind Chad Pennington, Ryan Mallett behind Tom Brady, and the most recent one is Brock Osweiler behind Peyton Manning.
Right.
I mean, and Osweiler is probably going to be the most significant one, because look at all the money they invested in him, that he is going to tie up the Texans from doing other things that they need to do. They can't just, it puts them in a position that they can't just like, we're going to move on from him. They're tied to that contract for a long time, and it's going to prohibit them from making other moves that are going to help this team. So I worry about that with a Jimmy Garoppolo, because he's only got 1 year left on his rookie deal. He's going to cost you a lot in a trade, and we don't even know what he is. If they make this move, it better be on more than just the limited amount of play he's had. They better be drawing on the week of the joint practices that they had. They better have gone back and pulled his college scouting tapes, because it's a big risk to put on an unproven guy.
Absolutely. And, you got to also remember, too, that he was playing in a Bill Belichick system. That's not not just any kind of offensive system. It's been one of the most successful, if not the most successful, this past decade. So you put him in another system where he doesn't have the coaching and the plans that you have in New England. How's he going to adjust to that? We don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you want to move on to Bulls or Blackhawks, or do you want to talk about the first crop of college players for the draft? Stick with football.
Well, I figure we might as well stick with football before we move on to Bulls and Hawks. So why don't we go at that?
Sure. I don't know if you had a chance to look anybody, but I'll give a breakdown to all the listeners that are new. The ones we've already gotten a lot of requests for players already, but the way on the show is that after the Bears season ends and before the draft is every week we pick a position and we profile several of the players in that draft. That's not going to be, I'm not going to rank them all because I just don't have the time to watch everybody in there. But I'll pick some of the high guys and some of the mid-round guys and profile them. And I sit down and watch actual game film of every player. So I'll watch every single snap that they're on the field, and not just ones, not highlight reels, but every single snap they played. And I'll watch multiple games to kind of get a feel of tendencies they have, or skills that they have, or things that I think can project well to the NFL or won't project well to the NFL. So this week we started with the running backs. Next week we'll move on to tight ends. So I had a listener send me a message asking me to do Joe Mixon from Oklahoma. So I definitely did him. And I was asked by a listener, let me open this up quick. He suggested 2 quarterbacks. So we're definitely, this is Young Future on YouTube. He wanted me to give him the shout out. So, he wanted me to review Brad Kaya and Davis Webb, and I'm definitely going to review those guys, but when we do quarterbacks. And he also asked me to plug his blog. So it's bigfuturenews.sportsblog.com. That's bigfuturenews.sportsblog.com. And I'll put that on the website as well, so you can check that out. But the guys I reviewed, the first one I did was because I'm a big Michigan fan. Michigan's my college football team. Is Davion Smith from Michigan, 5'11", 228. The pros on him is he's a decent blocker. He was a pretty productive college back. He's a big back, and for his size, he's fairly athletic, and he's developed some decent hands for a non-catcher. So you can sort of, with running backs, see who's a natural catcher and who's not a natural catcher. And he's definitely not a natural catcher, but he's developed some nice hands. The cons on him is he doesn't break tackles like a guy his size and strength should. He's taken down by too many leg tackles, which is not really not a great thing for somebody that size. And he lacks breakaway speed, and he needs to be more patient in the hole. That's something he's really lacking. He just hits that hole, and that's not going to fly unless he goes somewhere with a great offensive line. But I think in the right system, he could be a really solid back. He's going to have to be somebody that works really hard, and he's probably going to have to drop about 15 pounds and develop some patience. An update since I went and reviewed him is he played in the College All-Star, the East-West game over the weekend, and he was great in the practices and in the game. He looked good. So it was nice to see. I think that's going to help his draft stock. I look for him to be drafted probably 4th round-ish.
Yeah, right now I'm looking at WalterFootball.com. They have him projected between 3 and 5, so seems like 4 is kind of the average in between there.
Yeah, so it was a pro and a con for him is that a pro is he wasn't featured that much this season for Michigan. Michigan went with a back by committee. So he didn't get all the miles on him that some of the other featured backs did. But the bad is he didn't get featured.
That was mentioned here.
he didn't get featured, so he's not as highlighted. Like, previous regimes probably would have ran him into the ground at Michigan, but you would have seen more of what he can do. So it's a double-edged sword on that one. The next one is Samaje Perine out of Oklahoma. Oklahoma had a dual backs, and Perine is 5'10", 235. He's got nice feet for a guy his size. He's like a bowling ball kind of guy, and he has the power to carry blockers. He's got some decent on-field speed for him. I probably won't project, probably won't they be that fast in the underwear Olympics as far as the combine, but on-field speed with pads, it was pretty decent speed, and he can make some nifty moves in the hole. I hadn't seen any Oklahoma games this year, I don't think, so it was completely fresh to me. But when he doesn't have the ball, he's a super lazy back. Lazy route runner, lazy blocker. Just seems like he doesn't care when he's not holding the ball. And that's bad. That just, part of drafting a guy is you get to interview him and you get to learn about his habits and tendencies and medical history. And I don't have access to those. So some of the things I have to extrapolate based on what I see on the field, and him away from the ball is not a good thing. And that was really bothersome to me. And that would knock him on my list.
It seems like according to the scouting reports I've read is that a lot of his upside was how physically he plays, but they added the same thing, how, he was lazy off the ball. And though it can make some skeptical, they still haven't projected at the top second round.
I wouldn't be shocked because he does have a lot of potential. And I think if it's one of those things is if you told me you came from the future and that he was going to be 1,000-yard rusher in the NFL, I'd be like, I could see it. But if you told me that he fizzled out and didn't last 3 years in the league, I'd be like, I could see that too. It's going to be his motivation going forward because he has all the physical tools. It's how he puts them together.
Makes sense.
If he can, and what I wrote in my notes is if he can get a fire lit under his butt, he has the talent to be a featured back in the NFL. But I really question his worth ethic solely based on what I see on the field. The next guy I'm looking at is Brian Hill out of Wyoming, 6'1", 219. He's got the pros. He's got some decent speed. He runs with passion. He's a loper. So when you watch him run, he's like Matt Forte, where he doesn't get up to the full speed right away. It takes him, a little bit to get up to that speed. But he's not a very powerful runner. He runs with goofy legs. Like, I don't know how to describe it. Is most guys when they run, they have like a regular running motion, and he looks like a drunk stork when he's running. That's literally I can describe it. His legs all going crazy. It was hilarious. The first video I put on, I paused it. I was like, what? No way. And then I kept watching some more plays. I'm like, this guy runs goofy. But I watched one game in particular. He played against Nebraska, and I was really not impressed with him. I thought it might just be because Wyoming was way outclassed by Nebraska, a pretty good Nebraska team. But then I watched some more games, and he just wasn't that impressive to me. And I know a lot of mock draft sites and people that profile draft picks rank him pretty high. I'm just not that impressed by him. He's not an elusive runner, and he's not as powerful as he should be. At best, I liken him to the Adrian Peterson from the Bears, not the Adrian Peterson from the Vikings.
Sure.
And so I wouldn't rank him very high. And if I'm the Bears, you're not in desperate need for a back. He's off my board.
Yeah, I mean, we have our back core pretty much set in place. I know sometimes you can, you draft more than you need, but yeah, kind of what the scouting says here. They project a second or third round pick for him. So, I don't know if you'd go higher or lower for him or whatnot.
Oh, I'm definitely lower on that one. So next on my list is Joe Mixon. And again, I hadn't seen any Oklahoma games, so he was fresh for me. 6'1", 226. And this is a guy who, I'll talk about this in a second, is pros. He's got really nice speed, good shiftiness in the open field. I really like that, his shiftiness in the open field. He's got the ability to change direction. He runs with power. He's a great pass catcher. I described him as a more electric Jordan Howard. I like on field. I like this guy a lot. I rank him really high as far as on field production. And then I was like, why do I know this name? I haven't watched any Oklahoma games. And then I was like, oh, he's the one who punched a woman in the face.
Yeah.
So my cons on him are he doesn't have that home run speed, and I didn't see enough of his blocking. I don't know about his blocking ability, but he's got terrible character. He punched a woman in the face on a video.
Yeah, not good.
So on field, I like Joe Mixon a lot. I was not expecting what I saw, and Joe Mixon is the guy that I was asked to look at. But so I was really excited to see what I saw on the field. I was really impressed, but he has so many character issues that makes me really glad that the Bears don't need a running back, because he would have to be one of those guys that you go, all right, do we draft a terrible person because he's a good football player and make that decision? I don't like having to make those decisions.
Right.
I'm glad the Bears aren't in that spot, but some team is going to be in that spot and really going to have to make that decision.
Yeah, the range I see on this scouting report right now has him anywhere from the first round to the third round. So, I guess the way that some teams evaluate, the moral aspect of that will probably vary.
Oh, absolutely. If he was a model citizen, he would be my number 2 ranked running back in this draft, and he would be a first rounder.
Yeah.
But he's not. So a lot of teams are just going to take him right off the boards. And there's some decent running backs in this draft. So somebody's going to say, listen, I'm not willing to take on that character, or I'm going to have to wait till the later rounds when it's not going to be impactful, because if he turns out to be a total D-bag, I can just cut him and move on and not phase me. Whereas if he was a model citizen, you're like, you know what? I'm going to feature him. He's going to be great on my team, and I'm not worried about that character issue. So next is Curtis Samuel from Ohio State. Curtis Samuel, 5'11", 197 pounds. Pros on him, very quick. Nice speed, shifty runner, nice receiving ability as well. But for me, the cons on him are he's solely a third down back in this league, a scat back. He looks much smaller than he's listed. I mean, he's size-wise, what he's listed at is a nice size running back, is 5'11", 197. But he looks much smaller than that. He looks so much smaller than everybody else. So I don't see him as a featured back in the NFL. That's my big knock on him. So no way he's a featured back. He's either a third down back or somebody moves him to a slot receiver. And that's going to be where the draft variation is going to come from him, is because if somebody deems him as a running back and nothing else, he's probably going to be 4th, 5th round, maybe 6th round, probably 4th, 5th round. But if they see his potential, depending on what happens in his pro day and in the combine with his route running and his pass catching ability, if he can show he could play slot receiver, I could see him moving up to late 2nd, early 3rd.
Yeah, right now this scouting report I'm reading is they have him projected in the 1st or 2nd round, but that is if he becomes a pro and he is more of a receiver than a running back. They did specify that.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't scouted the wide receivers yet, so maybe he could even move up, to a late 1st round, but like he's got a lot of talent. It just he's little. So that's just really going to be a knock on him.
Right.
I have a couple more guys I looked at. One is Deontay Foreman, 6'1", 249 pounds, out of Texas. This guy is an absolute giant back. He is hulking, a powerful runner. He doesn't go down with arm tackles. He just, he's big guy, but he's not fast at all. He's not shifty at all. And he's way too big at 249 pounds. He can't play in the NFL at 249 pounds. My notes on him were Ricky Williams was a really powerful running back, but Ricky Williams was also fast. He could bowl you over and then outrun you. It's Foreman lacks that explosion and that danger factor like that. He could go all the way. For him, he for me is going to have to improve his draft status. He's going to have to drop a lot of weight and show a good 40 time at the combine or his pro day to improve his draft status. But if he's able to do that, he's able to drop down to like 235, 230 and put up a little speed, then we're talking that he could be a decent back because he's a powerful guy. He's not gonna get a lot of negative yards or no yards. He's gonna be a guy that's gonna fall even if you hit him at the line of scrimmage. He's gonna fall forward for a yard or two or three, which is nice. So for him, it's right now. I mean, it's so early in this process. I would see him probably third round, maybe second round.
Yeah, this one's got 1 and 2, but you raised a lot of good points there, and they added that he's not really much of a target. He only made, let's see, I just missed it. He just made 7 catches, so he didn't play much as a target. So that's something else to note, I guess. But they have him 1 and 2, but it sounds like from what you're saying, it's probably not right now a realistic placement of him.
Yeah, I could see him moving higher up. I don't see 1 just because I really don't see that many running backs getting taken in the first, and the guys that are the consensus 1 and 2 as far as running back, I haven't even got to yet. I just can't see like 5 running backs getting taken in the first round. That's why I move him down. But
right.
He's got the potential to be a big bruising back that you be a featured back in this league. He has to get in shape, lose some weight, and show his quickness. If he can put up a middle of the range 40 time for running backs, and if he loses 15 pounds, he's gonna boost his draft stock a lot. If he comes in at 249 or more to his pro day or to the combine, and he runs a slow time, he's gonna fall probably to 4th round. And the last 3 running backs that I'm going to do is I've got Christian McCaffrey, 6 foot, 202 pounds out of Stanford. This guy has had amazing productivity at a power school and a power conference out of Stanford. He's elusive as hell. He's amazing in the open field. I mean, he is a pure athlete. He's got great speed, great quickness, especially for a guy his size. And he looks bigger than that 6 foot, 202 pounds. The knocks on him is he doesn't have the power or size, I don't think, to be a featured back. And I think being a featured back in the NFL is going to waste his skills. I don't know what anybody else thinks about him, but honestly, for me, I think this guy is really talented. He is a really talented athlete. You have to find a position for him, and I think in the NFL, he's going to wind up being some sort of like a Zach Miller type guy, like a halfback, tight end kind of guy. He might occasionally do some running, but he's going to be a lot of pass catching because in the wrong program, he could be a bust in the NFL. But in the right program, this guy can be a really great weapon.
And I'm sure other teams are going to be looking at him and thinking about, okay, we play this system. Do we need him? Is he a good fit? So, it's kind of one of those things where you feel like wherever he gets drafted, it's going to be kind of a scenario of we like you in our system, not just going to take you just to take you.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the way it's got to be for this guy. I mean, for this guy's sake and for the team's sake, because he's really a boomer bust because he's not the position, and that goes for a lot of players that their position in the NFL or in college is not going to be their position in the NFL, like a Jabril Peppers, who he's not going to be a linebacker in the NFL. Christian McCaffrey, I don't see him as being a featured running back in the NFL. I see him as another position, and he's talented enough to do it. He's got great hands. He's got great elusiveness. He can run routes. He's from a big program. I like him. This is a guy I don't even want to say where I think he's going to be a first rounder. If I'm a team in the later half of the first round, I gobble him up. But it's going to be interesting to see where he goes because I think where he's drafted is going to set a lot of tone for this draft.
Makes sense.
The two more guys to go through one is Dalvin Cook, 5'11", 202 pounds out of Florida State. This guy has incredible vision in the hole. He's got nice speed for a guy his size. He gets to his top speed really quickly. So he's got good acceleration. He's shifty in the open field. He's got great patience, letting blocks develop. But for me, the cons on him are he lacks the power to break backfield tackles. So you're going to see, when lines are stacked, he's going to have a lot of loss of yards and no gains type runs. He needs a head of steam in order to generate that power. So when he gets a head of steam, he's got some power and he can, break tackles then, but he needs a head of steam to be able to do that. His blocking is a little lackluster. He's not that impressive without the ball, and he's had some fumble issues. But he's a really solid back. I like him a lot. I don't like him nearly as much on the field as Joe Mixon, but Dalvin Cook reminds me a lot of a Marshall Faulk type back. But in the NFL, I don't see him being a 25-plus carry back. I think he's like a 15 to 18 carry a game back in the NFL. And he's ranked pretty much either number 1 or number 2 in the most people's rankings of running back.
Yeah, this is what I'm seeing here. Yeah,
I have him purely as a football decision number 3, but figuring in off-field character and things like that, I have him as 2. I don't know how anybody has him higher than 2 because the guy we're about to get to is off the charts in my mind. But anything you want to add?
No, you pretty much summed it up all well according to this scouting report. So,
and number 1, far and away for me, far and away, is Leonard Fournette, LSU, 6'1", 230. He's a guy I've seen some highlights from, and I don't watch a lot of LSU games, so when I sat down to watch film, it was more of a name than like he was just a name and like a legend rather than I had seen a lot of him. But when I watched this film, I was absolutely in awe. Absolutely in awe. He's big, he's fast, he will punish you. He runs like something straight out of a NFL Madden game where he's got the truck stick and a spin move, and he's unreal. The only cons I have for him is possibly injury concerns. That's hard for me to judge. I know he's had some injury concerns at LSU, but I don't have his medicals and I don't have a team doctor to look at him. But if that's my only concern, he's as solid an NFL prospect as you're going to see. My notes on him are he's Adrian Peterson. He is Adrian Peterson. You watch him and that's all you can think. His size, his speed, his power. If LSU didn't have a garbage offensive line, this kid could have put up 3,000 yards in a season. That's how good he is.
So my question to you about him is there a team in the NFL right now that you could see taking him?
Honestly, there are very few teams that I could see not taking him. He's so good that even if you're, the Bears at number 3, it's really hard because there's so many other good players. But let's say the Bears were drafting number 10. number 10 to 12. And if Leonard Fournette fell to you, he's so good, you would say, I don't care that I had Jordan Howard. I'm taking Leonard Fournette. That's how good he is.
Then I guess it could be up for grabs then who takes him.
Yeah, I wouldn't, if you told me, again, this magic guy from the future came and was like, the Browns are going to draft him number 1 overall, I'd say, okay. I don't have a problem with that. He's a safe pick. He's a safe pick, and he's a great pick. Sometimes it's when you draft a guy, you don't know what you're going to expect, but there's some people in the first round when you draft them that they're going to be really good. Their floor is pretty high. But some people get drafted higher just because their ceiling is much higher, and they may never reach that ceiling. Is Leonard Fournette has a really high floor. Even if he's not as great as I say, he's going to be a really solid back. But he has the chance to be one of the best running backs we've ever seen. Yeah, and
he's projected as a top pick in this mock drafts that I'm looking at right now. So there you go.
Yeah, I think the only reason he falls is because this is a pretty good draft as far the top end guys. There's a lot of talented defensive guys.
Right.
He's also going to fall a little bit just because teams still don't value a stud running back like they used to. Had this been he played 10 years ago, people would have been like, oh, this is the draft where you draft Leonard Fournette.
Yeah, and especially in a passer's game that it really is today, you're absolutely right. It's not valued as it was over a decade ago or so.
Yeah, even a guy like Adrian Peterson, who's still really good, you're just like, is he worth the money we're investing in that position? So that's my only thing that's going to make him fall. But whoever drafts him you're set. Like he's there. And if for some unknown reason he ends up falling to somebody at the end of the draft, if he went to the Packers, the football gods help us all because they're going to be unstoppable with Aaron Rodgers and Leonard Fournette.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you hope somebody bad drafts them to make them better rather than the rich get richer.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So that's all I had for the running back position. Is next week we'll do tight ends, which this is not shaping up to be a great tight end draft, which is not that shocking because we haven't had a great tight end draft in a while. But anybody out there, if you have players that you want reviewed, let me know. I will definitely add them to the list, even if it's somebody that's projected to be a 6th, 7th rounder. If there's somebody you want to hear my thoughts on, I'm more than happy to. I just I've got a full-time job and the show and a 2-year-old and a house, and I can only watch so many guys, so I just sort of randomly pick who like 10 guys or so to look at each week. So if you have a guy, I will definitely throw them in the mix. And same for you, Alex. If there's somebody you are interested in, let me know. I will throw them in the mix as well.
Yeah, I definitely have plenty of friends who are sports fanatics and college sports fanatics that could probably contribute to that a little bit.
Yeah, this is like the NFL draft is like my Christmas. I absolutely love it. I've gone a bunch of times to the actual draft, and it's like my Christmas. I love it. So I guess moving on, we don't have a ton of Blackhawks or Bulls to talk about, but I want to talk about them a little bit. Who do you want to talk about first?
Well, the Blackhawks are playing right now. They're up 2-0 against the Canucks, so I guess we might as well talk about them a little bit.
Sure. Since we last talked, they've had 2 games. They had a 6-4 win against the Avalanche and a 1-0 win against the Bruins, and there's a couple other news and note things. Let's start with that 1-0 win against the Bruins.
That was something.
I mean, basically, that Hossa was, the lone goal scorer, and it's the father's trip right now. And basically, I just want to hug Marian Hossa's dad and be like, "Thank you for giving this guy who seems to be an ageless wonder right now to our team."
Oh, he's like a fine wine.
Yeah, and you had Scott Darling playing lights out. And
he's the reason we won, honestly. He really is.
Yeah. It's funny because you're still going to get people that are dogging Crawford and want Darling, but I just look at this as if you can trade Scott Darling right now to somebody that needs goaltending and you get somebody back, oh yeah, you do that, because otherwise you're going to lose him anyway, probably to the expansion draft, or in free agency anyway. He's a restricted free agent. Is if you can get something for him, sweet. And I mean, right now he's 12-4 as a starter, and he's got a 2.3 goals against average, which is better than Crawford's 2.54. So he's playing great. And you're right, he is the reason that they won that game.
Yeah, there was an interesting conversation on 670 The Score this morning considering Crawford and Darling. First of all, yeah, I know it's a shock. You turn on 670 The Score and they're actually talking about hockey, but they were. But, they were saying...
It's the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. It's the weekend and the football games haven't started yet. So, what they were kind of saying was, you look at Crawford and you look at his salary and you look at the salary cap issue, and he's taking a decent amount of the salary cap, and that kind of justifies in some people's minds of trading him and making Darling the starter. But Darling is an outstanding goaltender at the backup, and he could be a starter elsewhere, and I think it's very possible he could go to Vegas. But they said at the end of the day, as good as Darling is, Corey Crawford is the guy you want in goal in the playoffs. If there's the guy you want in the playoffs, it's Corey Crawford. And we've won 2 cups because of him the last few years. So, it's really is a blessing to have 2 really good goaltenders in your system right now. And, make the best of it now, because, one of those guys is going to be gone at some point. It's probably going to be Scott Darling because of either free agency or the expansion drafts, because Crawford's contract is big, and I do not see the Hawks trading him anytime soon.
And he's a full no trade clause as well.
Exactly.
I can't see him wanting to go anywhere else other than maybe Montreal, who doesn't need him.
Right, he could easily say no to all the other teams.
Yeah, I mean, just Montreal's his hometown, so maybe we would go there. But the thing with Scott Darling is he's a restricted free agent at the end of the year. The Hawks don't have money to pay him. Whatever. I mean, even if he gets an increase to a backup goalie pay, they can't afford that. So he's gone no matter what.
Right.
Unless he's dumb. And I mean, I'm all for the hometown discount if you're a top player and you're going to make a good living anywhere. But like, this guy has a limited amount of time to make his career worth of money, and he's making like the league minimum. So to take the league minimum again, sure, it's I would love to make $600,000 a year, but that's what this guy is going to bank his future and his kids' futures on. So,
right, and he's not young. He's not like 24 years old. He's older than that. So that's another thing to keep in mind with that whole thing.
Yeah, when somebody's going to pay you at least $1.5 million, if somebody offers you $1 million more a year, triple your salary basically, almost, that you sort of got to take that.
You're going to take it, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if it's the difference between 9 and 10 million, okay, that's you're in a different conversation. But when you're at that level, then it's a different conversation. I just see him being gone no matter what. So if in this trade deadline, if you're able to move him, sweet, go for it. Bring something back. Bring a top 6 forward back.
Yeah, I mean, and we also got to think there's another thing you want to bring up with the goaltending is, if he leaves, who's going to be our backup? Because you look at the system right now, I don't really like who we have in the system right now as goaltending. So that is another hole that would have to be figured out.
Yeah, it's pretty abysmal right now as far as
Matt Carruth. Ugh.
Yeah, he's not good. I mean, the reason Rockford's struggling is they had good goaltending last year. Leighton is not an NHL caliber goalie anymore, but he's a good AHL goalie.
Yes.
And you just don't have anybody else. Matt Carruth should be he's an ECHL goalie.
Yeah, I mean, he was playing with Indy Fuel last year, and he probably should still be playing there now.
Yeah, he was basically he's like too good for them, not good enough for AHL, and that's not good enough to be a backup in the NHL.
Right, and Lars Johansson,
Yeah, so
the NHL,
there's a lot of good goaltending in the NHL. It's just, and the Blackhawks have some good goaltending, but behind that, there's nothing in the pipeline. They're gonna have to focus on that in the coming drafts.
Right. I mean, it's time to get some good, talented, goaltending in the system because Corey Crawford's no spring chicken either. So, you got to think about the future at some point, and you need depth at that position, especially if somebody gets hurt. Because when Corey Crawford got hurt, Lars Johansson was the backup, but we never had to use him. But, you just never know.
I mean, if you think about it, though, is the Blackhawks have had no problems developing that. I mean, they had Antti Niemi, who's gone on to do well for himself, and Corey Crawford, and now Scott Darling. They've done okay for themselves, but right now it's a pit. They gotta focus on for the future.
Hey, maybe Nikolai Habibulin will come out of retirement again.
That would be something.
Yeah, it would be.
But yeah, this win against the Bruins, it was another Blackhawk type game that they've had too many of this season.
Absolutely.
Is they get off to a slow start, they get outshot, they have to lean on their goaltending, they have to find some offense late in the third period, but somehow they come out with a win, and you can't keep doing that. You can't mortgage your future on that.
Not in the playoffs, especially when that comes around.
I mean, they were dominated at the face-off, 29-20. They were outshot 30-22. This was not a good game against a team that was really struggling. I think the Bruins had lost like 4 or 5 going into this game.
Well, they had that game against Detroit where they were up 3-0 and 4-1, and they lost that game.
Yeah, so it's so to beat them 1-0 is, I'm glad they got the win because it's still 2 points, but they should have dominated that team.
Yeah, and like you said, we've seen that so many times this year. I mean, we struggled to beat Colorado. I mean, luckily Colorado realized they were Colorado, and the Hawks said, okay, let's wake up, and then all our young guys step up and win that game for them. But yeah, I mean, there were games where the Hawks played the same way, and they didn't have that luck on their side with the goaltending, and they got crushed, a.k.a. that game in Washington. Absolutely.
And that the game Tuesday against the Avalanche, is they 6-4 win. Seems like it was a nice, comfortable win, but that score did not indicate how close that game was.
No, it was close throughout, and there were times when the Hawks were losing to them.
Yeah, there was they were down 4-3 in the second intermission.
That's right.
That game, they were absolutely dominated at faceoffs, 37-22.
Yeah,
almost double.
Yeah,
and this was another game was dominated by the young kids and Marian Hossa. Marian Hossa was a +4 in that game.
Yeah, I mean, he had all the assists there, and I think he got his, what was it, his 1,000th one, or what am I thinking?
I don't know.
He broke a milestone with assists. I know that.
Yeah, so the goals in this game, Schmaltz had an unassisted goal. Seabrook had a goal with assists from Rasmussen and Schmaltz. Caro had a goal with assists from TVR and Hossa. Hinestroza had one goal with assists from Kempney and Seabrook. Another goal that was assisted by Caro and Hossa, and Caro had a goal that was assisted by Hossa and Taves. So you had 5 of your 6 goals were scored by players 24 or under.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom lines were doing all the work that night, and they were showing off, the talent that they do have. And, it's a good sign for the future to have some of those young guys, even though you are scared about who you could lose in that Las Vegas draft. But seeing Vinny Hinestroza do what he's been doing, it's been fun to watch, no doubt. And, I really like this kid a lot, and I really like kids like Ryan Hartman. But, the overall point of this all is that with this blend of young players and this blend of veterans, there's been a lot of kind of just growing pains with that. And the main thing is getting out-hustled and outshot a lot of these nights, even if they are winning. Yeah,
I mean, this game, Coach Q broke up the Taves-Hossa tandem to try to spark the offense, and it really worked. They worked with Hinestroza, Caro, and Hossa combining for 8 points, and Hossa had 3 assists.
Yeah. Here's something else I want to bring up about the Hawks, and that's their division, and it's been kind of interesting. Here are the Wild and the Hawks battling for the top, and for a while the Blues are right there in the mix, but lately the Blues have been sputtering around, not in a good way at all.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, and that's good for us.
Yeah, it is.
And I think the Wild are going to pull a Wild, and they're hot in January, February, and then they're going to start to fizzle out. But it's good to keep the pressure on the Blackhawks. Is they can't think that we can let up, because they're not this team from a couple years ago where they can just flip the switch going into the playoffs. There's so many young kids on this team that don't know what they have to do to win in the playoffs. They don't know what it's like to hoist that trophy. They don't know what it's like to when you're completely on empty to find something in the bottom of that tank. So you have to earn that in the regular season.
Yeah, and you talk about the Wild, and it's so interesting. It seems like every year it's like an annual tradition that the Wild goes through this unreal hot streak, and then they just kind of fizzle out. Like, it seems like they do that every year. And you look at the other opponents in the Blackhawks division, and you think, wow, the Stars are underachieving compared to last year, and I think a lot would argue that they just overachieved last year. The Predators have been very disappointing. Obviously, the Avalanche have been really awful, and the Blues lately have really, really not looked good at all. So, the Hawks and the Wild are kind of your battle teams right now. And, obviously the Blues can get back on track, and the Predators can, start picking things up as well. I don't think that's out of the question, but, you can't help but wonder, is this just going to be a 2-team race to the end, or is someone else going to get really hot along with the Hawks and the Wild?
Somebody's got to get hot. Somebody's going to catch fire, hopefully. Not hopefully. Somebody's statistically going to catch fire and push their way in. But, the Blackhawks still just have to keep pushing along. I mean, I like this game. It had pluses and minuses for me. I mean, Crawford slumping in this game was not good.
Right.
This defensive rotation, not that good. But to see the young guys come in and take the pressure off of Kane and Taves and the other veterans was a positive.
Yeah, and speaking of Taves, I think it's pretty obvious that he's been very, very frustrated with this year with the lack of production, and things just don't seem to be going right for him. I mean, how many times have we seen in a game where he gets a shot off and it either just misses or it hits something and, doesn't go in the net, or he's not getting the breaks that he used to, and he just looks skyward in frustration. I think it's probably the most frustrated we've ever seen Taves in a long period of time.
He gave up the chance for an empty netter at the end of that Avalanche game. Gave it up to Caro.
Amazing. That's just so unselfish right there.
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I mean, part of me was like, I wish he would have been selfish and scored it to hopefully just been like, you know what, screw it. I'm Jonathan Taves. I'm going to, get on a streak. But that's not him. He's going to give that up and let somebody else take it.
Yeah, and I think that just speaks to the character that he is, and that is a fantastic leader. And, I think you could value that at times more than, a couple of goal statistics, because we know who Jonathan Taves is. We know he's one of the best captains, if not the best captain in the NHL. We know he is one of the top players in the NHL. He's not trying to prove anything. He doesn't have to prove anything. But as long as he's, continuing to be the positive leader that he is for this team, that is what is important, because he doesn't have to prove anything at this point of his career, already winning 3 Stanley Cups and being in the league a top player for 10 years.
Yeah. So the other tidbits with this Blackhawks is one is there's the two of them are going to tie together is this team, one of the things that they're sort of missing is that a top 6 that they need a top 6 forward. Somebody asked me about what the possibility of bringing Patrick Sharp back. I
Yeah.
want to hear your thoughts.
I love Patrick Sharp. He did many great things with the Hawks. I just think he's too old and too injury prone. I don't think we would get the Patrick Sharp that we've known for so many years. We saw his decline in 2015. You can tell I just think he's past his prime and his time is nearing done in the NHL. And I hate to say that because I've always been such a Patrick Sharp fan, but I don't think he's the right person to go after in this scenario. I'm sorry, I just don't.
Yeah, I agree. It's a financial issue. He's missed a ton of time this season with concussions, which in the NHL, if you've got concussions, that can be really problematic. It's not like baseball or basketball where you can avoid getting knocked to the ground or collisions, but this is hockey. That's a real risk that you trade for this guy, and he ends up just being on the injured list and costing you money and costing you a roster spot and whatever you traded for him.
Right, and I know people like the nostalgic view of it, and people are such big fans of his, and they like him so much. And I mean, I get that to an extent, but you also got to understand, you got to play what's relevant right now and not what was a few years ago. That's just
absolutely
kind of the way to sum it up.
Yeah, and as far as trading for a top 6, yeah, that's on my mind right now. It's that they need a top 6 forward, but I'm also glad that the deadline's not right upon us, because I think if we give them a little more time and we find the right line combinations, we could see young players step up and play well enough to right now where you don't need to make that trade. Because one of the big problems with the trade is the Blackhawks have made it clear that they don't want to trade away draft picks because they're hosting the draft this year. So they don't want to be giving up their first rounder when they're hosting the draft.
Then they've traded away a lot of picks over the past few years in other trades. So
yeah, and they don't want to give up a lot of their young players because they're banking on these guys to be their future. When older guys need to get replaced, or when you need to fill out cheap roster spots at the bottom,
right?
You need these guys. So I just don't know what ammunition they have to make a trade. They'll probably make a minor move, but I don't see them making any sort of major move.
They did make a minor move with the Kings just a few days ago. They traded one of our farm defensemen for someone from the LA Kings.
It was Michael Lotta from the Kings
yes,
for Cameron Schilling, and Lotta's going directly to Rockford. So it's
right.
That's
he's
not
only
gonna be,
played a handful of games in the NHL, not much.
Yeah, so I don't see them making a big splash trade unless somebody is looking to dump a guy or whatever. I just don't see it really happening. I guess anything's possible with the Blackhawks and Stan Bowman, but I just don't see them making a huge move like they have the last couple years.
Now, here's my question for you. They made a lot of moves last year. Do you think that maybe they made one move too many?
Probably.
It's kind of how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There can be too many moves. This year, I think the right trade might be not to make a trade, because you're starting to get some young players playing well. Is give them the chance for playing time, give them the chance to build a cohesive line. Kruger is really close to returning. He could be returning this week, possibly. So that could, shift things around a little bit. The lines right now is for tonight's game. Top line is Ryan Hartman with Jonathan Taves and Richard Panik. Your standard second line of Panarin, Anisimov, and Kane. Third line was continuation from the other night is Hinestraza, Caro, and Hossa. And the fourth line is going to be Rasmussen, Schmaltz, and Tutu. And I think if you put Kruger in there, You can go without playing Jordan Tutu, who hasn't been much for us at all. And Roosevelt is getting the playing time tonight, which is
Well, and the Hawks just let up 2 goals in the past 2 minutes, so now we're tied at 2. Speaking of that,
it's so frustrating.
it's these 2-goal leads. These 2-0 leads.
Is Crawford in goal tonight?
Yeah,
Okay,
he's been amazing up to this point.
Yeah, this is like a Crawford thing. It's like multi-goal leads and giving up a goal within the last minute of a period. Those are like kryptonite to Corey Crawford.
Either the last minute goals or the last minute penalty, either one of the two always happens at the end of the period.
Yeah, but all in all, is the Blackhawks, they need to get better on faceoffs. They just have to, and they've got to shoot the puck more. Their shots are lacking, partly because they're looking for the perfect shot, and partly because they're not going after rebounds. And tonight's been, before we got on, what the little bit I did watch is, you saw a lot of nobody getting in front of the net trying to get rebounds, and just lack of a net front presence and lack of opportunistic shots, secondary shots.
Right. And, how many times have we said this where they pass up just shooting, period, for a nifty pass?
Yeah, and I mean, you'll hear Eddie O say it nonstop is when you shoot the puck on the net, good things happen.
Right, yeah, he's like, that puck's got to get on net. You hear that a lot.
Yeah, you got to shoot. You got to shoot the puck. Passes are nice, but you've got to keep putting pucks on net, and you have to crash the boards.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I've always kind of talked about this year was their power play unit and their power play approach just seems so predictable. It's a passing clinic with guys just trying to kind of stay stationary, and if you just kind of box in the middle of the ice, you can easily defend that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's wrap this up by talking a little bit about Bulls. I don't want to get in too in depth with them just because I'm so annoyed. But since our last episode, they've had 3 games. They lost to a lowly Dallas team 99-98 on Tuesday.
Got swept by Dallas this year.
Yeah, they lost 102-93 on Friday to Atlanta, and then they beat Sacramento 102-99 last night.
That was a good win because
no, it wasn't. I'm going to argue with you. So go ahead. You go first.
They beat the Kings. That's good for the draft. We get their pick. We needed to beat them.
No, it's bad because it's top 10 protected, and they're now number 10. So we needed to lose to them so they could stay 11 or 12.
Oh, yeah. Okay, you're right. I didn't think about that.
Yeah,
I didn't think about that because I've been so far removed from this, really, honestly, emotionally, where I don't even keep track of that anymore. You're right.
Yeah, so this win, it was so many things that were wrong with this win. Like, a win is a win, I guess, but it took a bunch of good defensive plays by Dwayne Wade in the fourth quarter to win.
Right.
Took 30 points by Dwayne Wade to win. You saw the aging of Dwayne Wade at the end of that game where he went up for a dunk and missed it. And Jimmy had a quiet 23, but Boogie Cousins had dropped 42, and Robin and Taj couldn't cover him at all. Boogie Cousins was just like dominant in that game. And the future of your team, Jaren Grant, Denzel Valentine, and Bobby Portis were all do not play coach's decision. And you saw Doug McDermott and Michael Carter-Williams combined for 5 points in 41 minutes. Like, there was so many things wrong with that. Paul Zipser got a lot of time, which they're apparently liking Paul Zipser. But Rajon Rondo only played 6 minutes in the game, and they were all in the second quarter. He didn't go in the second half. He's supposed to be leading your second team. He doesn't go in. So you're basically relying on aging veterans and some last minute heroics to win this game that you shouldn't have even won in the first place.
Yeah, and that's been another common theme of the Bulls this year. And I'm going to say this. Honestly, I pray for the Bulls to keep losing. I want them to lose. Because maybe if they have a bad record, maybe management and ownership will actually wake up and realize that none of this is working or even remotely sustainable to be competitive.
Yeah, I mean,
That's how I feel.
Hopefully they have a game like the Atlanta game down the stretch where they're down by 30 points going into the fourth quarter. I mean, I know the Bulls made it a little bit interesting with where their backups outscored the Atlanta's backups, but it was
that score didn't tell you how the Hawks dominated the Bulls.
The Hawks dominated the Bulls. I think it was like a 25-point lead at halftime.
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler had 19 points, but he looked so uninspired. And at that point, they dropped 5 of 7. Wade only had 4 points. And he actually played back-to-back games. But they just looked bad against Atlanta. And if you can't even hang with Atlanta, you have no business talking about playoffs or competing because you're just not there.
Right. That's why I just want them to lose. I don't like them seeing winning these. It frustrates me. I'll be completely honest. It frustrates me how well the Bulls play against the Cavs in the regular season because it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean it means nothing.
It is not. It's not a measuring stick. They'll talk about it's a measuring stick, but if you make it a game where it's a must-win for the Cavaliers, is you're going to lose by 30 points. LeBron James will crush you. You don't have an answer for that. It doesn't matter if you beat them on a Tuesday night in December. It doesn't matter. When it comes down to the stretch, they're a much better team than you because they have LeBron James and you don't.
And that's why those wins against the Cavaliers are so unsatisfying because we know that there's no way we'd ever do this in the playoffs, and we never have. We've never beaten LeBron James in the playoffs, whether it was against the Heat, whether it was against the Cavaliers. Oh, how fun, hunky-dory, a win against the Cavs in November. It just doesn't do it. I'm like, do this in the playoffs, and then I'll be happy. You had the great chance to do it a few years ago, and they didn't.
Yeah, it's a few years ago before Derek got hurt, we looked at you know what, we are almost there. We're almost ready to compete with Miami, and facing them in the playoffs. We're like, okay, we're almost there, but you realize we're not anywhere near as good as that team now, and
light years away.
And so we're so far from that team, and the Cavaliers are just as good as Miami was then, and so it's just like, well, we don't fit in there. And I hear these rumors that the Bulls are going to target Chris Bosh in the offseason.
I was just going to bring that up.
Why? I mean, Bosh is a nice player, but what is he going to add to this team?
And he's got life-threatening conditions right now with the blood clots.
Yeah, I mean, the good thing is they're actively shopping players. I mean, they should get rid of Dwayne Wade. Bye-bye Dwayne Wade. I like Dwayne Wade, and I'll probably, even if he gets traded, I'll probably go out and buy a Bulls Dwayne Wade jersey just because of this Hall of Fame guy, and he played for his hometown team, and he grew up right near where I grew up, and so I'll probably go and get a jersey. But at this point, he's not helping the Bulls to do anything. Just let him go out and play for a winner. Let him try to get one more title before he retires. They're trying to trade Rondo, which good luck with that one.
Who wants to take him? And now he wants to coach too. Yeah.
You know what? It's funny is I was listening to Casey Johnson talk today on the radio, and he was talking very positively about Rajon Rondo. He said, listen, Rajon Rondo, he led the league in assists last year, so he's not that far removed from being talented in this league. But he said he's older. He knows this is, he's at the end of his run in the NBA. He said if you talk to any player on this team, that it has been that they'll all give you praise because he's worked with the young players. He showed them how to watch tape. He's trying to be an influence on this team. He had one run-in with a coach, and that's gotten, and it was the assistant coach, Jim Boylan. But he said, other than that, and he said it wasn't even that bad of a run-in. It was more of they weren't happy with his productivity, and then it escalated out from there. But they said he's been very good. And they can't, and he's been good with the media as well. So, he's just not the right fit for this team. And so
Absolutely
getting
not.
rid of
He never
Rondo,
was.
fine. Nikolai Mirotic get rid of him too. He's on the block. Realistically is everybody should be in discussion except for Jimmy, because you don't have, I mean, I know there's going to be people out there saying, oh, you should have made that trade last year with the Boston Celtics for Jimmy, but what you would have gotten some like younger athletic players, but are they making your team better? Jimmy is a top 15 player in this league. You got to build around Jimmy. And Jimmy is not that athletic, I mean, as compared to some of the superstars in this league, but he's a really good player, and you just got to build around him. You've got to add talent, and part of that is going to be getting rid of the garbage. What is Bobby Portis? You got to sit down and ask yourself hard questions. What's Bobby Portis? What's Denzel Valentine? What's Jaren Grant? What is Michael Carter-Williams? Honestly, I'm at the point where you trade anything that's not nailed down. You trade anything that's not named Jimmy Butler.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much a fire sale, and I think that's the right thing to do here. This is clearly not going anywhere, and if you want a new direction, then you got to do painful things like that.
Absolutely. And that's where the Bulls are at. And I hope somebody gets fired, and it's probably going to be Gar Forman. I don't see John Paxson and John Paxson and Gar Forman both getting fired. I think it's going to be Gar Forman gets fired, and John Paxson goes, it was his decision to bring in this coach and this blah, blah, blah. I'm going to take back the reins. But if we all look honestly, that they should both be fired.
Absolutely. I think that whole management scheme, it needs to be just completely cleared out, and they need to just start over. Completely start over. New personnel, new philosophy, new outlook, new strategy, new everything.
Absolutely.
Because you know what? This is turning into the Kenny Williams White Sox, where let's just go after old washed-up veterans to try to be competitive.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
how well has that worked out?
The only way I could see trying to rebuild on the fly is if you were to just clean house and bring in DeMarcus Cousins. So you have Jimmy Butler and DeMarcus Cousins and some higher draft picks, and you get in the lottery this year. Then I'm like, all right, well, then we've got something to discuss. But I don't see them bringing in DeMarcus Cousins, and Chris Bosh is not the answer, and this team is just really struggling here.
Right, and that's nothing against Chris Bosh, but let's face it, he's older, he's got those problems physically, and there's just what would he do to improve the team? What would he do to make him a contender at this point? Nothing. Unfortunately, I hate to say it, but again, stop looking back in 2009, 2010, and look now. These guys that you value so much, they're not the same. Dwayne Wade, Rajon Rondo, Chris Bosh, these are moves that we wish the Bulls would have made during that time. If they could have got Dwayne Wade with Rose and Noah, that's probably a championship right there. I mean, let's face it. But, they're making these kind of moves too late.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but signing Chris Bosh would be a total Bulls type move. It really would.
It would be so Bulls.
We're gonna get younger and more athletic by signing Chris Bosh.
Yeah, we're younger and more athletic by being very old and not very athletic.
Pretty much. But I think that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Make sure you are checking us out on social media. Alex, if you want to give your Twitter handle.
Sure, it is at ShyFanPat1. You could look up Alex Pat on Twitter.
Or at Swerski Sports. The website is swerskisports.com and facebook.com/swerskisports. Make sure you check those out. And however you are listening to podcasts, whether it be iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, hit subscribe and share with your friends, leave comments. And again, we've done the first week of our college scouting. We've done running backs this week. Next week will be tight ends. So if you have any positions that you want to ask about, ask now, because I'll put them on the calendar. And thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants the Cubs to win!
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan.
She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like
Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on planes. Bears 31 to -7.
the Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.